Hi, this is Greg Maddox, and you're listening to Out of Left Field on the Grueling Truth Network.
Hey guys, welcome back to Out of Left Field. Chris back from vacation. Both of us here today for you. Going to be a great show. Lots to get to. Blake Snell comes out in the media, makes some statements about how he feels like he might be getting a little bit underpaid by the Tampa Bay Rays. Hard to believe the Rays underpaying anyone. Some rule changes for baseball this year and the next couple of years going forward prior to the end of the current CBA. Plus, we get into our A.L.West breakdowns and plenty more. Show being brought to you by mybookie.ag. And, of course, as always, you can find everything with the show, past, present, and the future, on thegruelingtruth.net. Let's put the ball in play. First off, man, how's the cruise? We had a lot to get to last week. We'll touch on a little bit of it so that, I don't get to just completely skewer you without you here to defend yourself. But how was vacation?
It was good. We went to Cabo San Lucas, Mazatlan, and Puerto Vallarta, and, had some shore excursions in each place. Went snorkeling in Cabo. We went zip lining in Mazatlan. We drove some ATVs in Puerto Vallarta, and we had tequila everywhere. So, so we had a really good time. It was nice to be away for 7 days, just me and the wife, for our anniversary. And now I'm back and ready to rock.
It's exciting. School back tomorrow. So unlike some of us who didn't get a spring break, you at least got that. I know you get back to it tomorrow, and you're just kind of counting down the days, pretty much rounding third and heading for home for your school year.
Yeah, 9 weeks left. We're in the fourth quarter now, so.
Well, hell, you're pretty
almost
much
over.
Yeah, you're. Yeah, if you're going to four quarters, I guess you are. You are at third and on the way down the baseline. So, plenty to get into. Before we get into the rest of the show, I wanted to touch with you on this with you real fast. We talked last week. We did our NL Central breakdowns. I was really surprised by your last two. Now, granted, in reading what you did, it kind of convinced me to adjust my picks a little bit. I had a bigger disparity between the Brewers and the Cubs. I still think the Brewers are the better team and will win the division, but we both had, I think, 1 and 2 within a game or two of each other, which that works. But I was really blown away that you had a massive jump for the Reds coming all the way back up to, I believe you had them at 81 and 81, finishing at 500 this year. I know they made some big moves. I know, like I mentioned to you when I called you once the show is over, you even in your breakdown, you forgot to mention Alex Wood being one of the biggest pieces, I think, from L.A. in that trade. But I'm just not sure that I believe that everything they got, and that's not projecting Dallas Keuchel possibly going there. I'm just curious. I wanted to give you a chance to really not have to go through me as to why you think the Reds are going to be, even though the fourth place team, a team that finishes at or above 500.
Well, like I said when you and I talked, I really feel like the Reds are the team. If a team is going to get an A or A+ grade in that division for their offseason work, it's going to be the Reds. And give me while I'm trying to. I didn't know that we were going to get into this at this particular moment because you didn't tell me. So you're springing this on me a little bit. Let me go back and check my breakdown. But realistically, picking up Yasiel Puig, as much as people who have roots in the National League West love to hate Yasiel Puig, and as much as you and I have talked about his attitude and his clubhouse presence.
He's a daily wild card, I think, right. Is pretty much how we both see him.
But the bottom line is the guy's a good baseball player. He's a strong addition to a team if they can keep his attitude in check. And I think going from a team like the Los Angeles Dodgers, number 2 market in the world, to the Cincinnati Reds is going to be a reality check for him. I think it's going to put him under control a little bit. Of course, Tanner Roark's worth probably 5 or 6 wins by himself. They're going to pick up Derek Dietrich, like you said, Alex Wood, Matt Kemp, who I think you and I feel like is destined to be a Dodger. That's where he performs the best. Right. But if he can maintain the high output that he had last season as a Dodger in Cincinnati is going to be a huge addition for them. The linchpin and the question mark for me is Sonny Gray. Sonny Gray is the only one that I question as to whether or not he's going to do better. He did flame out last year when he was playing for New York. But,
has he ever flamed on? I mean,
well, yeah,
I've always talked about how good he could be in Oakland, but it's always been a real up and down. He's never really materialized into that consistent, great pitcher that we thought.
But he's had a couple of seasons that make him look like a number one.
So did Matt Harvey.
If he can, right, and we'll talk about Matt Harvey later. But if he can maintain a consistency, right? If he can maintain even a consistency at maybe a 3.5 ERA guy, maybe, right? If he can break even wins and losses, I think next year that helps them get out of that 40 wins. We saw how well they did after that really, really terrible start last year. We saw how well they came back from that, right? And a lot of that is credit to their manager. But I think if we have that from the beginning, yeah, I absolutely think that they can break even next year. That they can win at a 500 clip.
So you really do think that? So you really do believe that the guys they added really add 14 wins to that ball club?
Yeah, I think all told, yeah, I think they do. Especially in a division that while other teams got a little better, some teams got much worse.
Okay. I think I enjoyed it more when I could just land-based you and you couldn't respond, but it's okay. It's okay. I mean, again, I like it, and at the end of it, I would love to see it actually happen. I think that this is a club that really they've floundered around, but they have floundered around trying to kind of set themselves up for some success. Tucker Barnhart, the catcher they re-signed a couple of years ago to a better contract. Scooter Gennett is the biggest question mark right now because he wants an extension. They're kind of holding out, but I would love to see it. I think that they can be a team that really makes that division interesting. The Cardinals might be as it is, but I think they made some moves that really will all of a sudden begin to make things look a little crazy.
Yeah, I got the Cubs. I got the Cardinals at just above 500. I think Goldie's a big deal. Not just for having the bat that Goldie is, but also for the provides the lineup for Yadier Molina, who is going to have to get pitched to now more, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's still more of a 250, 260 kind of guy, but it's just the hard thing for me with them, like I said last week, is I want to see. We're so used to them having such a big rotation, and with Waka, we're still kind of trying to see him get back to form. Adam Wainwright is definitely getting older. It's just they don't have that same big rotation that we're used to, kind of what always made them great.
And they lose Bud Norris and Luke Weaver, which is painful for them. But yeah, I think it's going to be a fun division to watch. I think it's going to be an interesting season for the National League Central. And most importantly, I'm looking forward to watching the Brewers, because if there's a team in the Central that can dethrone the Cubs, it's them.
They did it last year, so we'll see if they can just hold the same spot. Moving on into the topics for today, as we mentioned at the top of the show, Blake Snell coming out in the media through his representation, basically just calling out Tampa Bay Rays in about the most professional way that he could, while still pretty much saying, you all are a bunch of cheap jerks. We're a family show, so we'll keep it nice. So Blake Snell, after winning the Cy Young Award last year, led the majors in wins, in ERA, won his first Cy Young Award, obviously voted into the first All-Star game of his career. What a surprise. Has slated this year to make $573,700. Okay. He is getting an increase of $15,500 from last year. Sounds kind of nice. Except when you sit back and realize that $10,000 of that $15,500 comes from the league-wide minimum salary hike. He is getting a $5,500 pay increase from the Tampa Bay Rays, an owner worth $800 million because he won the Cy Young. It's a joke, and the problem is we are at a point right now where players, and we say they don't have the power at this point in his career, and he gets that. And for the Tampa Bay Times, through his representation, Blake Snell said, quote, "The Rays have the right under the collective bargaining agreement to renew me at or near the league minimum salary. They also have the ability to do more adequately, or to more adequately compensate me, as other organizations have done with players who have similar achievements to mine. The Rays chose the former. I will have no further comment and look forward to competing with my teammates and field staff in our quest to win the World Series in 2019. Hopefully this pushes me. Arbitration will be the business side, and that's what I'll tell them. I think fair is fair. It all comes around in the end anyway. At the end of the day, you get what you put in. I'll be motivated," close quote. It's a lot right there. There is a lot right there. And we've talked about, hey, how will this kind of any of this type of team business mentality affect a team once the player has a little bit of power? Talked about it with, obviously, with Chris Bryant. There was some discussion with Ronald Acuna last year getting held down a little bit. We thought Vlad Jr. might be an issue. Granted, as we mentioned last week, that the injury kind of takes that concern out the window, so they'll get to keep that extra year of control. And all of a sudden, I mean, this is a really bad look for Tampa Bay, especially when you look at all the other players who won a Cy Young. And granted, I'm not saying they got massive pay increase. A couple $100,000 by most guys is a lot different than $5,500.
Well, I mean, look at Tim Lincecum got $245,000 in 2008, right? Kluber got $70,000, and then a 5-year, $38.5 million deal.
Right.
3 weeks after his pay increase, after his initial salary was announced. There's not a lot of precedent for guys under rookie control, though, winning Cy Youngs. I mean, it just doesn't happen very often. But
right. Even with DeGrom, he won, but this was his arbitration year, so that helps him a lot more than it does a Blake Snell, because you win it, then you go into arbitration, and your case is a lot more kind of in your face.
But there is precedent from the Rays to do this to their players. I mean, this is not the first time this has happened, right?
No.
Jeremy Hellickson, right, got $5,500 when he won Rookie of the Year in 2011. You got Brad Boxberger. Brad Boxberger led the league in saves and then took a $2,200 pay cut in 2015. I mean, this is the Rays' MO, right? So they didn't penalize his renewal. They didn't charge him the renewal penalty, right? The $5,000 renewal penalty. So he gets to keep all $5,500 of his increase after the $10,000 for the league minimum. But this is not what you do to a Cy Young winner, in my opinion. Now, you and I talked about this before the show. There is a very real possibility that Blake Snell comes out in the first game of the year, starts first game of the year, struggles, continues to struggle, and then this becomes a moot point. The likelihood is not that, but, pitchers are fickle, as we've discussed many times in the past on this show. Could Blake Snell come out and have a bad year? Sure. Or a bad start to the season? Sure. Does it still justify only a $5,500 raise for the reigning Cy Young winner? No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all.
I agree there. I mean, this is one of those things where I'm not saying you've got to offer the guy a massive contract, but, there were talks of an extension in the past. And do we think that this is going to be a one-and-done thing? I certainly don't think that this is going to be a one-and-done thing with Blake Snell. I mean, to me, he's it's really hard saying when you're the best pitcher on one of the worst teams. But again, that goes into what the Rays like to do, and the Rays like to pay as little as possible for as long as possible and then say, go ahead and scoot on out of here. We have seen him –
they're not the only ones.
No, but we've seen him consistently improve, right? And now I understand that he's gone from When he came up in 16, he went 6-8. 17, he goes 5-7. Last year, he went 21-5. So this is one of those moments where I also understand from the business side of, before we offer you a lot of money, let's make sure that you're going to repeat the same kind of thing. But if that's the case, that's fine. But at least give him his fair due for the year, right? At least give him, an extra, $90K and whatever it is. We talk about Chris Bryant when he won the MVP and Rookie of the Year. I mean, he was still making less than $1 million. Mike Trout for the longest time was making less than $1 million. I mean, you realize they're going to get paid, but when these guys come up, they aren't making the kind of money that you just think, oh, he's a professional athlete, he's making bank. He's making more than your average Joe, but at the same time, he's not making what you think he is, and he's one, crash into the wall from that career being over and that really that earning potential never being realized.
Yeah, and that's true. At any given moment, he could take a comebacker that ends his career, right? That's the risk that professional athletes run in this game.
Which, by the way, being behind the plate and watching a liner come off of an aluminum bat and barely miss a kid's head, that'll put a lump in your throat. I had that on Friday. And pitcher, I'm talking this buzzed his head within about 5 inches.
Yep. But here's the issue, right? Let's say the Rays were willing to talk, and they have been talking actually about long-term deals with Blake Snell and buying arbitration years early and all the things that come along with wanting to keep a guy who is apparently going to be a good pitcher for a long time. But what do you offer a guy who has 3 years in the league and one high performance year? Right. He's made a steady increase, but he had one big year. You offer him 3 years? 3 years, $10 million? Blake Snell doesn't take 3 years, $10 million right now.
Right, because arbitration eligible, he's going to probably make more. And I think the bigger thing is, even then, if they offer you a long deal, and I understand that the question then becomes, do you want to get tied down to the Tampa Bay Rays? Let's be honest here.
Right.
Do you want to waste the best years of your career with a team that is going to perennially suck and not give a damn to be any better?
But with a Blake Snell, are they a 97-win team again? I mean, we're talking about a team who last year very quietly was the third best team in the American League, but couldn't go anywhere because they were in the best division in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of funky crap happened with that team. And we'll get into this.
Yeah, like a rookie winning the Cy Young. I mean, let's not forget that he won 21 games.
Well, I mean, he's his third year in. He's not a rookie, but I mean, it's a guy who's he's been around the bigs, but the fact
that rookie control.
Well, that's one thing, but Corey Kluber was not a rookie, and we're talking a whole different thing here. If he's first year in, all of a sudden rookie of the year, whatever. It's not like Michael Fulmer winning rookie of the year and Cy Young, which almost happened a couple of years ago. Either way, to me at this point, it becomes a factor of does he really want to stay with this ball club, and if you're looking to try and go ahead and wrap him up, I think that he may look for a smaller length deal with some decent money to go ahead and get him through control and out into the free market. I'm sure he's going to want. I think he's going to want to get out of Tampa Bay.
I agree. I think getting out of Tampa Bay is probably going to be his first concern when he becomes eligible to. But what really needs to get addressed is not the Tampa Bay Rays. It's not Blake Snell. It's the system, right? It's this whole, hey, we'll cover you in arbitration thing, right? It's the whole, hey, great job those first 3 or 4 years. We'll pay you in arbitration, but for right now, just hang on. These guys have been playing. By the time they have 4 years in Major League Baseball, they have an average of 6 years in the league. I mean, they're playing a couple of seasons in right? They're playing the double A's and the triple A's. And then even if they only play a year, double A and triple A, and they've still got all this time that they've been working to get here to get that paycheck. And I'm sorry, that's what baseball players are doing. I know they love to play the game, and I know that it's not always all about money, but it is a lot about money.
Sure.
Getting to Major League Baseball. And when they perform this way, at least have a system in place that can pay for that performance, that offers compensation for that performance. Like you brought up Chris Bryant, right? The system that allows the Cubs to send Chris Bryant down to the minor leagues for 2 weeks has fundamental flaws, right?
Sure.
The system that allows them to send him down, that allows them to send Vlad down. Now, obviously, the injury that negates this whole argument again, but for Chris Bryant, it doesn't. And that system still exists. So I think that system existing is what needs to be addressed. And that system existing is what's going on here. When a guy is 3 years into a contract, should he really be under rookie control? You make the argument he's not a rookie anymore. Why is he still under rookie control for 6 years or 4 years before arbitration?
Well, that's one of those things that has to be obviously collectively bargained, and we will see that, I'm sure, from both sides be bargained in the very near future. I mean, this is.
I'm going to be honest, man. That's the kind of argument that shuts seasons down.
Yeah, and I think that has been talked about enough to where that is thought to be the potential in the future. The good thing is some changes are being made in the game, and it's being the changes are being made and agreed upon by both sides before the new CBA comes into effect. And that is through both Major League Baseball directly and Major League Baseball and an affiliation with the Atlantic League of Professional Baseball. Talked about this last week on the show briefly, but I said I wanted to hold off on this until you got back. Of course, you guys can always reach us on the show at OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook, and our own Twitter pages. I'm at Graham_OOLF. Chris is at Chris_OOLF. So let's look at this. Some of the most drastic changes obviously come in the affiliated league because it's much easier to go ahead and make changes there and to observe from the outside when you don't have to have people collectively bargain what's going to happen. These are guys just playing independent ball and trying to get into leagues where they don't have the same kind of – they have no real power at all. So let's look at this. Some of this we talked about. Some of this I hadn't actually seen until just now. So here are, let's say 2, 4, it's like seven or eight rule changes. 7 rule changes here. Home plate umpire will be assisted in calling balls and strikes by a TrackMan radar tracking system. No mound visits permitted by players or coaches other than for pitching changes or medical issues. Pitchers must face a minimum of 3 batters or reach the end of an inning before they exit the game unless a pitcher becomes injured. Increase the size of first, second, and third base from 15 square inches to 18 square inches. Require 2 infielders to be on each side of second base when the pitch is released. If not, the ball is dead, and the umpire shall call a ball. Time between innings and pitching changes reduced from 205 to 145, and the distance from the rubber to home plate extended 24 inches in the second half of the season only. No change to mound height or slope. Obviously, we talked about this briefly a couple of weeks ago when it first came out. These are the official changes on the Atlantic League website, atlanticleague.com, as to what is going to be implemented for the next 3 years. This is really interesting. There are some of them I know that still hold pat to what we originally talked about, which we thought was a bunch of crap.
Right.
But there are some I'm really interested in. The base size, I think, is different. It's going to give guys a little bit more room to work with trying to get to a base. Obviously, also it helps keep guys out of maybe the line of fire of a hard sliding player trying to break up a double play being turned. But there are some things here that I really I like. The possibility of seeing how it turns out. I am curious, though, if we're going to see Atlantic League games being broadcast in ways where the general public can view and see how this is being handled and taken, because, is MLB going to try and kind of skew this to meet what they want by not being able to have it televised and seeing people watch it, or are we going to have full access to these changes and what their general feel is by players involved?
Well, I think that if they don't broadcast these games, that it's going to create an issue, because I feel like fans are going to want to see these changes implemented before they make big league appearances, especially things like home plate umpires being assisted by pitch trackers. I think that automated balls and strikes is going to be something that people are going to want to see implemented. How does it work? Does it work? Are we getting strike calls that are we losing these ball calls that we don't like and gaining strike calls that we don't like? What are we really changing here, right? Because you and I have talked about with electronic strike zones that some of those down and in curveballs are going to be strikes when you don't want them to be. That's pitches that batters shouldn't be swinging at, but they're going to get called strikes because they pass through the strike zone. I mean, add to that the fact that if ball strike artificial intelligence gains consciousness, I mean, the world is going to be taken over quickly by robots. I also think that no mound visits is a big deal, right? We saw the reduction or the limitation of mound visits in Major League Baseball last year. We thought it was going to be a much bigger deal than I think it turned out to be. But no mound visits compared to a limited number of mound visits is a huge difference. There is a huge difference between saying you can only go to the mound X number of times per game and saying, hey, unless you're making a pitching change or you're assessing an injury, you can't go out there. That's a big deal. That means that now pitching coaches can't go out, try to calm guys down, right? Third baseman and first baseman can't come over and talk about strategy anymore.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest ones that I don't like. I'm good with limiting the number of visits, but taking away especially if I'm an umpire and all of a sudden I've got a guy throwing upper 90s and he gets crossed up with my catcher. My catcher's bounded back in to try and stop a ball from hitting me, and I can't go ahead and say, hey, go out there and talk to him, figure this shit out. Pardon my French. But I've been there, and it's not an enjoyable thing when you realize you just about got hit or got hit. Then you're going to have a manager saying, well, why are you giving this to them and not my guy? Do I have to cross up my guy in order to go ahead and get you to offer him this? And it's just, that to me is a big issue.
Right. I don't know how I feel about increased base sizes for first, second, and third. That's just an interesting, it's just like a weird thing to do. So now do our base paths become smaller, right? By 3 inches because the base is going to be larger. We get batters having runners having an easier time sliding into base, avoiding tags, right? Because they have 3 extra inches to work with. My biggest issue is, are we going to see baseballs start to hit these things, right? Are we going to see base deflections?
I doubt. I mean, we're talking a couple of inches here. I doubt it. I really doubt. I mean, and really the only time that this would, it sucks because we talk about it in little leagues and stuff, right? The double first base, and everybody hates double first base because there's so many nuances to how it works and when you can't use a double first base and yada yada. But the biggest issue, honestly, the one thing I want to see is verbiage that at least dictates when a runner can leave the running lane and have access to the base. Because you're doing all this stuff to change the base size, yet there still is no verbiage that stops these arguments of, well, he's out of the baseline, this and that. Well, the base is in fair territory, right? He has to be at some point to reach the bag.
Right. And I think that this idea that we're going to make the base bigger, but we're not going to say, hey, this is what the batter can do now in association with this larger base, or the runner can do in association with this larger base, is missing the boat on the purpose for it, right? I mean, we're sort of just making bigger bags. And I don't know that gives us anything. I don't know that the bigger bases really, really adds anything to the game I don't know. The one that I hate the most, besides electronic, I think we can agree that electronic strike zone is the one that we dislike the most, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like it only for the fact of I want to
see how it works.
Well, that I just want to see guys finally go, yeah, okay, yeah, this kind of sucks. This kind of sucks because now I'm having to. I'm if you're a pitcher that has finesse and a great breaking ball, you live there.
Yep. You live down and in, low and away, low and in.
You're going to be trying to club up a round ball with a round barrel. You're either going to roll over it. You're barely, it's going to be so hard to get any kind of launch angle on the ball. And we're going to start, now, granted, it might be great because with that, if guys are rolling over and popping out, all of a sudden the games move faster. So maybe at the end of it, that's what they want. You want to talk about speeding the game up? That's a great way to speed the game up. Guys have to swing. Guys can't make a big contact. Game gets over a lot faster. But guys are going to realize that they don't like this.
Or it just returns to its cricket roots.
Right.
And we get flat bats. The one I don't like the most, I think, is probably the no shifts. And not because I think the shift is
just because we don't want to use two of that word in the whole show. I've already gone ahead and I've already used my my allotment for the day. So
no, I don't like the no shifts thing. The reason I don't like it is because now we're asking teams to stop using good defense and saying that a hitter not being able to play against the shift or to hit against the shift, his inability is more important than the defense's using strategy to get him out.
Well, and the one thing I will say on that, because I don't want to malign this topic too much. We've kind of talked about it. The last couple of games I've seen teams attempted to use a 4-person outfield on Bryce Harper and on Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge went ahead and was able to quickly defeat the attempt by demolishing a base.
Yeah, unless you could put that fourth outfielder about 50 feet beyond the fence.
Right, in the stand.
It becomes a moot point.
But, what I wonder then is, okay, are they going to try and say, well, you got to have 3 guys in the outfield and 4 guys in the – I mean, it's just at what point are you going to stop the ability of teams to kind of tinker with their own player placement?
Right, and I think that when you say we're going to stop letting teams use strategy so that these guys don't have to hit against a shift is ridiculous. If you're Brandon Belt, and that's just a guy I'm going to pick on because he's easy to pick on because he's a left-handed pull hitter. But if you're Brandon Belt and you know that they're going to line their entire infield up on the right side because you always hit to the right side, maybe you should learn how to hit against the shift. Or, hey, here's an idea. Get a little bit faster, bunt the ball down the third baseline. Make them work against you. It's ridiculous to say, oh, well, these players can't learn to hit the opposite way. Oh, right. Well, they're getting paid millions of dollars to play a kids game, so they either learn how to do it or they don't, and they hit into the shift every time. I don't know what to tell you. I think it's garbage. I also don't like the idea of moving the mound back 2 feet because, well, did you see 50 Cent when he threw out that first pitch?
No, I saw him stand on the pitcher's mound and toss a ball.
Right, he almost hit the cameraman.
Yeah,
who I think was standing somewhere about halfway to first base.
Yeah.
That's what pitchers are going to look like when they throw curveballs. Curveballs are still going to go 55 feet, but the mound's going to be at 67 feet. And so they're going to hit 6 feet in front of the plate instead of 3 feet in front of the plate.
Which, in and of itself, could make it interesting because if you're getting that and you're getting that ball bouncing over top of a catcher, now we have a lot of uncaught third strikes with guys maybe having a chance to go ahead and make it first base.
The only reason we're doing this is to lower the overall velocity of the pitch, right? To make it easier for hitters to put the bat ball. Are we really going to, again, are we really going to say, oh, I'm sorry, it's too hard for you to hit a ball coming 101 miles an hour. Let's take that let's take that element out, instead of asking the hitters to get better? Instead of asking Bryce Harper, who's making $330 million over the next 13 years, to be able to hit a 101 mile an hour fastball, we're just going to take the 101 mile an hour fastball out of the game? I think that's ridiculous. What I do like, I like minimum of 3 batters. Why do I like minimum of 3 batters? Well, there's a long list of reasons why I like pitchers facing a minimum of 3 batters, and at the top of that list is it was kind of our idea. So
and that brings us into the changes with MLB, right? Because MLB has gone out and actually said this is how things are going to go ahead and happen. And there are some pieces from this discussion.
I will say this, though. I like that they're trying it out in the Atlantic League first.
Yes, yeah, it at least gives you an idea, but I do believe this is going to happen either way because it's already been agreed to. And these. Well,
they said they wouldn't file grievance against it, which is completely different from agreeing to it.
Well, let's start this year. Right, starting this year, we have 4 rule changes to go into effect. First, inning breaks, a 5-second change with local games go from 2:05 to 2 minutes, and national games go from 2:25 to 2-minute breaks. That's nice. So we're gonna have 2-minute breaks all the way around. I like that, especially if you're not going to change the batters being faced thing right away. That's kind of a big one. The trade deadline. We are now going to have one trade deadline, and that is it. Okay. If you don't have
something about that in the past,
if you don't have your guy by the end of July, tough. That's it. There is no more waiver trade deadline. That's it. July 31st, that's your cutoff. Can't get them. Figure out with what you got. Try and win a World Series that way. The All-Star Game voting has changed. It's going to be a little bit different now. So there's going to be 2 rounds of voting. One, you will get to vote for every player that you want by position. There'll be a final vote dubbed, quote, Election Day in either June or early July, right before the All-Star Game, where the top 3 vote getters at each position basically go into a runoff for the starter. Kind of cool. Okay, cool. We already know they're going to be they're all going to be in the game. Now let's let the fans decide out of those top vote getters who's going to be the starter. Nothing big, no big deal. I think kind of cool. The Home Run Derby, the winner will get a nice $1 million prize. Aaron Judge has already said that that is not enough to incentivize him to come back into the Home Run Derby, which I guess sort of kind of stinks. But I guess at that point we'll take what we can get.
It's going to be enough for some guys.
Sure.
It's going to be enough for some guys. You got to look at Aaron Judge and say, well, that guy's getting ready to get paid, right?
Yeah.
Because he heads into arbitration next year, right? So
yeah, I think so. And
so
then
the
number of mound visits will be reduced to 5 per game for this year.
Okay. I don't think my feeling is that the number of mound visits being reduced by 1 doesn't really have much effect.
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, it's kind of I didn't see where the mound visit thing really held any big issue last year. So, right. Yeah, I'm not really sure it was necessarily.
Which I think we said also, right? We said that wasn't going to speed games up. It didn't. We said that it wasn't going to affect games in a huge way, which it didn't.
Sure.
And so I don't think that taking 1 away is going to either.
No, and I don't really think that, like you said, we didn't really even see any issues last year with teams getting that close to even having an issue with
right.
Losing all their visits.
I do like the commercial break thing, but for sort of a selfish reason, because I have the MLB.TV and they don't play commercial breaks. They just show you a loading screen for 2.5 minutes. And if I have 30 seconds less of that, I'm happy, right? No, I think it's good. I think that commercial breaks are something that we can probably get away. We don't need 2.5 minutes to get ready or 2 minutes 20 seconds to get ready for the new inning. Let's just get these guys out. Especially you're in the 4th, 5th, 6th inning. These guys are warm. Let's go. Let's keep it going. Let's keep moving. Let's play the game. I like the All-Star voting thing. I like this election day thing because I think it's gonna maybe bring down this whole.
Like what happened with the Royals, where the city gets behind and votes almost every single player into a starting role. You're just like, really? Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's gonna cut down on this what do they call it? Mob mentality voting, right? Where an entire group of fans says, well, we're going to vote as many times per day as we can to put this guy in the starting position, right? So I like that. I really love the trade deadline thing because you and I have discussed before, the waiver deadline doesn't make any sense. Why have a trade deadline and then say, oh, you can also these guys after the trade deadline as long as they're put on waivers, and then we'll still let them be eligible for postseason play. Just have a trade deadline. Just say this is the last day, period. Now you don't have the trade deadline expanding all the way into expanded rosters, right?
Which is something we will talk about here in a second. Before we get to expanded rosters, the injured list stint has been moved back to 15. Originally, we talked about it was dropped to 10 to try and dissuade guys from playing hurt, but then you began to see teams manipulate the 10-day for pitchers, and when you're going back to backs or you have a long game, you can put a guy on for 10 days, call up a guy from AAA, and then just send him back down. So they've upped it back to 15 games, and that'll be again in 2020.
To clarify, this is for pitchers.
I don't believe
for pitchers. Yeah, no. The minimum length of stay for pitchers who are optioned to minors or placed on the injured list will increase from 10 to 15 days.
Okay, so now again, what I see for MLB.com is the number of days players. It does not specify the position pitcher. It says players.
Oh, it doesn't.
No, it does not.
The site that I'm looking at does. So
no, according to MLB.com, it is still saying just players. And I think the reason for that, I mean, at that point, you kind of get into I'm drawing a blank on the word, but basically you're picking on one position, right? You're kind of
sure.
So, and then lastly, we will get into roster expansion in 2020. So, what it looks like now is that the roster size from opening day through August 31st will increase by 1 from 25 to 26. Basically, what this is doing is in years past, each team's roster expanded from 25 to 40 to allow for call-ups for minor league seasons and that kind of stuff. So the idea now is that, the 40-man roster is done. On September 1st, the roster will bump from 26 to 28, which is a big deal. But you'll have guys like Ohtani who will be designated as two-way players, so they'll still be allowed to both hit and pitch, and position players will still be allowed to take the mound if their team is winning or losing by more than 6 runs. So the reason for this is each team will have to designate all of their players as a pitcher or position player. So you will be able to go ahead and designate guys, hey, this is a guy who can play both ways, and the league will go ahead and honor that. But again, that must be done on opening day.
Well, and I think that the other thing that comes along with that, you can't just say, oh, this guy's going to be a position player and a two-way player. You can't just point at a guy and say he's going to be a two-way player. There's a lot that comes along with that, right? They have to amass or have amassed 20 innings pitched. They also have to have played as a position player with 3 at-bats per game in 20 games. So you can't just point at a guy and be like, yeah, he's going to be a two-way guy. And him too on opening day. It doesn't work that way. So there are fail-safes in place to keep teams from just designating pitchers right, relievers or whatever as two-way players in order to get more pitchers on the squad.
Which I am curious if Joe Madden will do something like that, because we've seen him, in order to extend his bullpen, flip guys back and forth. I am curious how that will work. I don't think that there's an issue with him moving a pitcher already in to, because at that point he's not making a pitching change. He's just swapping positions around. But I am curious how that will work for a guy like Joe Madden, who likes to tinker a little bit.
Well, and I think we all like to watch him tinker because
Absolutely. Oh yeah,
it's fun. It's fun to see Joe Madden sort of game the game by moving those pitchers around. I like the idea of a little bit bigger. I mean, one guy is really not a huge roster change, but I like the idea of going to 26. I like the idea of limiting the number of pitchers a team can carry. I like the idea of getting rid of the 40-man roster in September. You and I have talked about that. Yeah, it's great for teams who aren't in the hunt to give their guys, major league reps, but it's terrible for teams that are in the hunt because those guys getting major league reps, that could throw off something, right?
Right.
It could irrevocably damage that team's season late.
Right. Because if you're a team on the bubble and you're playing, two teams that are out of it and they're just throwing in scrubs to give them a chance to play, and that bubble all of a sudden gets a little bit bigger and you have a chance of actually going ahead and getting inside. So
right.
I think that is a big change. Coming up on the show, a manager already suspended in the big leagues, and it's still only spring training. The Los Angeles Angels are looking ahead at how they are going to keep the best player in baseball on the West Coast. And we break down the American League West. All that coming back on the show after this word from mybookie.ag.
Hi, I'm Mike Goodpasser from the Grueling Truth Sports Network, and I'm here with just one simple message. If you're watching the games, it's time to start making money. The Grueling Truth has recently partnered with mybookie.ag, an industry-leading sportsbook website, who reminds you that where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on, and that's why the Grueling Truth urges you to check out mybookie.ag. In addition to the usual thousands of odds, money lines, proposition bets, and futures offered on mybookie.ag daily, they also have in-game live betting and a mobile site that makes wagering on the go easier than ever. So join now and MyBookie will give you up to a free $1,000 cash bonus on your first deposit. Just enter promo code TGT50, that's TGT50, to take advantage of this offer. You can also go to thegruelingtruth.net, click the banner at the top of the page for mybookie.ag, and also get the same benefit and the same $1,000 free cash bonus on your first deposit. So visit mybookie.ag, courtesy of the Grueling Truth, and enjoy winning today. mybookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid.
Search that name on Facebook and like our page there, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook, at OO Left Field on Twitter. Also be sure to stop by thegruelingtruth.net. And we are sponsored again by mybookie.ag. Again, be sure to go to mybookie.ag, sign up, get a free $1,000 when you go ahead and get involved with that. Forget the DraftKings and the FanDuel, all that stuff. Enjoy it on mybookie.ag. Make sure to tell them you heard about it on the Grueling Truth Network. At the top of the break, we mentioned this right before we got into it, and we'll talk about it now. A.J. Hinch, the skipper for the Houston Astros, has found himself in hot water with an umpire and with Major League Baseball. Hinch sitting out today's game after a one-game suspension was handed down by the commissioner's office for his interaction and words about Angel Hernandez during and after the game in his office when he was interviewed by the media. Hinch called Hernandez, quote, unprofessional and arrogant, close quote, as I'm sure many of you are rolling your eyes saying what a surprise it was Angel Hernandez involved in this, and ended up getting himself ejected for arguing balls and strikes. It sounds pretty straightforward. It sounds like Hernandez then skinned and overreacted. And yet, once you take a second to look at what happened, Chris, not quite the way the story pans out.
Nope, I completely disagree with the thin skin and overreactive assessment, especially the one that AJ Hinch placed on Angel Hernandez. And so we've talked about Angel Hernandez quite a bit on this show, that he's one of the lowest rated umpires in Major League Baseball. We've talked about maybe he does get a little thin skin sometimes. Maybe he does overreact a little bit sometimes, especially in big situations. We talked about it after that playoff game against the Red Sox and the Yankees about how he was getting a little bit testy there at first base after getting overturned. We talked about that last season. But that being said, we talk about those things in the individual situation, in the context of those individual situations. To call Angel Hernandez, make a blanket statement that Angel Hernandez is thin-skinned and overreactive, I think is not only wrong, it's a little dangerous, because you immediately have fans who are going to just sort of brush off anything Hernandez has to say. And in this situation, I think that AJ Hinch was absolutely in the wrong. So let's walk through. I'm sorry, you were going to say something?
No, you're good.
Let's walk through what happened, right? And to get there, we have to start with a conversation that happened between Angel Hernandez and AJ Hinch about a week ago. Apparently, a week ago, Hernandez told Hinch that he gets wrong, right? He misses about 4 ball strike calls per game behind the plate.
Stop right there. That is part of this whole thing. Plays into the issue of fans saying that umpires need to be more accountable with themselves, need to be able to admit when they're wrong, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This happens. We know it happens. And I've talked to other guys that I know, big league guys that I know, and they say they are very careful with who they will ever admit something like this to. Okay. From my personal experience, this past week, literally about 6 days ago, finished up a game. The game was rolling. Great game. I was on the bases, partners on the plate. We get a drop, an uncaught third strike in the top of the 7th. This will put the go-ahead run on first if he gets there. Phantom tag by the catcher. My partner calls it out. Game's over. Head coach is unhappy. Head coach I've known for years, about 10 years now. Player's unhappy. Player spikes his helmet down at first base. That helmet all of a sudden is passing me at the pitcher's mound. Almost hit me. Well, that's a no-go. I see your eyes. You know, as a high school coach, that's a no-go. You don't do that. You can't do that. And it's not like we can, just give an equipment violation. That's an ejection. So I called him and walked over to him. Said, hey, you can't do that kind of thing. You almost hit me. That's an ejection. Head coach was upset. Long story short, he's upset that we tossed a kid. I should have let the kid stay. And I'm kind of realizing this talking. So long story short, the game was over. We basically rescind the ejection, allow the coach to take care of the kid, discipline him his own, which you and I both know we've been through enough PT sessions. It was not going to be a good session for that kid.
No.
Yeah, it was one of those. But my partner and I both talked after the game, and he, kind of basically he realized and admitted that he thinks he missed a call. So I called the coach with my partner's permission. I said, hey, I want to let you know, I should have afforded you the respect of handling your guy before I got involved. I was upset because, I got a batting helmet basically bouncing right at me like he threw it backwards. And, I get the heat of the moment, but that's you can't do that. And I said also we talked, I said, and as a crew, and that was my key there, as a crew, we missed that last play. We should have afforded you the opportunity to have a chance to make it to first base, have your kid have a chance to make it to first base. There's not a lot of coaches we can do that. I can do that with. I know who I can. I know who I can't. I know who is not going to stick it up my butt. The next thing happens. That coach is one of the ones who respects that. I asked Dale Scott this when we met a couple of months ago, and he said, it's very, very rare. You have to know the coach, We said, but it's very rare that you can tell these guys, hey, I messed this up or I jacked this up, because if you do, they want to use it against you in the next close play. And this is a key here where everyone's going to look at Angel Hernandez and say, you're too thin-skinned. You just can't admit when you're wrong. Yet here he is saying, hey, I think on average, on those close ones, I missed probably about 4 of them. We're talking a baseball that's getting there in 0.4 of a second. And you're making a split-second decision on, the hollow of the knee or just below the hollow of the knee or just on the black or just off the black.
Well, and let's not forget that 4 out of what?
300?
300 pitches a game?
Not bad.
That's not too bad. I would venture to guess, and you can argue with me about this. I'm sure people will want to argue about this. But I would venture to guess that despite the technology available, that an electronic zone is not going to be any better than 4 missed ball strike calls again.
Well, no, because it's even if it gets it right, it's going to be calling pitches that guys have never had called strikes on them in their career. And that's why I said I look forward to it, because guys are going to get a taste of what they want. They think it's going to be so great and it's going to be so good until they realize that those low ones are going to end up eating them alive.
Right. So you make a good point, right? Umpires are reticent to admit mistakes because they want to get it thrown back at him. So he tells Hinch, I probably missed 4 ball strike calls. Okay. Which you and I can both agree is not bad. But Hinch didn't get some of the strike calls that he wanted his pitcher to get in the top of the first. And then when he talked to Hernandez about it, instead of saying something in between innings like, hey, where did he miss? Or what are you seeing at the plate that I'm not seeing here where my pitcher's missing these pitches? Instead of saying something like that, A.J. Hinch looks at Angel Hernandez and says, we have technology to help you get better, and these pitches are strikes. Basically saying, hey, you can use this electronic strike zone to make yourself a better umpire.
Which he probably should have gotten tossed right there for that kind of statement.
26 years in the league, you should use this technology to make yourself better. And then said that Hernandez got arrogant about it.
What the hell did you expect?
Well, hold on now, AJ. Hold on, AJ. We have technology where you can go back and you can watch your strategy play out, and if it doesn't play out the way you like it, you can go back and not do that again, right? You can use that game tape and make yourself better. But if an umpire told you that, would you be upset a little bit? Would you think maybe that he was saying you didn't take your profession seriously? Or that you weren't doing everything you could to be at the top of that profession? I think to say that he got arrogant is arrogant in and of itself at that point. But whether Angel Hernandez called the first pitch to George Springer a strike because he was angry at A.J. Hinch or because he thought it was a strike, which is probably why he called it a strike.
I almost feel like, and I get that the talk is always Angel can be arrogant, but I feel like the word that maybe he wanted to use, maybe would have been more apt in that moment, might have been indignant.
Right. And he should have been indignant. That's not a statement you make to somebody.
No.
But let's even pretend.
No, I doubt and that's regardless of profession. Hey, Chris, there is technology out there to make you a better teacher because you screw things up on whatever it is 4 to 5 times a day. Hey, whatever this test you wrote, you put in 3 or 4 bad questions that kids ended up missing because they didn't understand it. I mean, anything you can always find that, no one's going to want to hear that kind of thing. It's just that's just looking for a fight.
Because instead of saying, hey, what are you seeing that my guy's not, right? You're saying, hey, you're not good at this. You're not good at your job. You should get better. Anyone's going to be indignant about that. So let's pretend. Let's go into pretend land and say that Angel Hernandez called the first pitch to George Springer a strike because he was mad at A.J. Hinch, which is probably almost definitely not the case, right? But let's say it is. It's neither here nor there. You don't then take the information that Angel Hernandez gave you in confidence and throw it back in his face because, like you said, that's exactly how you get umpires to stop being willing to admit they were wrong. Angel Hernandez calls the first pitch a strike. A.J. Hinch yells at him from the dugout, well, you used all four. And Hernandez runs him, as he should have. He's now argued balls and strikes.
And then Hinch has the audacity to say to the media, quote, the fact that he wanted to throw me out in a spring training game is pretty ridiculous. He's known for overreaction a little bit, close quote.
Right. He says, when you argue balls and strikes, you get thrown out. I get it. As it escalated, he said some condescending things that are inappropriate, unprofessional. I'll leave it at that, and we'll move on to the next game. Well, if he said something inappropriate and unprofessional, we want to know what he said. Because at this point, the only person that said anything inappropriate or unprofessional is you.
Yeah.
And you've done it in a very public way. And then when you're out there for 2 minutes, right, letting the opposing pitcher get cold, you're out there for 2 minutes arguing this, and then you meander down the third base path and out the left field exit instead of going through the dugout and into the clubhouse. You're being a child at that point. And I will say this, A.J. Hinch almost got himself suspended longer. He almost got himself suspended longer because he very seriously considered going across town to Jupiter and involving himself in his team's other game.
Right, the split squad game.
Right, the split squad game. He almost went and involved himself in that game, which would have, I can only imagine, resulted in a longer suspension after being ejected from one.
Yeah, that would have definitely, I think, been interesting. But what gets me is when he says, "I'm sure we will revisit this in season." That already sounds like Hinch is still looking to pick a fight again. Now, I get that you can go ahead and say, well, you think that Hernandez holds a grudge and they go ahead and, try and stick it up your hind end when he finally sees you guys again, wherever it might be. But for you to come out and publicly say that, now when something goes down, we all know that the media and the fans are going to put the onus and responsibility on Angel Hernandez and say that he was the thin-skinned guy, couldn't let crap go, and he's trying to hold on to it and get back at these guys for what Hinch said. Yet he is the one who is openly in the media saying, let's go, I'm sure this will come back, which means that if it does, it's going to look like, well, they came back just like he said. Well, yeah, but who's the guy who perpetuated this?
A.J. Hinch with that statement, A.J. Hinch gave himself carte blanche to be on a hair trigger every time Angel Hernandez is on the plate.
Right. And then we're all going to say, well,
as soon as he goes off, he's going to argue. He's going to go off on his hair trigger. He's going to argue balls and strikes, and he's going to get tossed on his first offense because that's how it's supposed to be. And let's be realistic. He realistically argued balls and strikes twice in this game.
Right. In
the first inning. First when he told Angel Hernandez he needed to get better, and again when he told him that he used all four. Right.
And then massively showed him up. And then comes out in the media and gives what this private conversation was and puts it out there in the media. Right. So now you have a guy who's trying to show you an umpire showing a manager respect in a conversation, who's getting it turned on him and stabbed in his back by a manager who again has no affiliation, has no care about what the umpire is doing. He's just the necessary evil that's out there. But now you want to go ahead and do all these things to go ahead and just basically stick it up this guy's backside, and you want to know why that when you go ahead and pop off during the year, he's going to go ahead and taunt you without a thought. Like you showed him up, you argued balls and strikes, then you went in the media and explained how you showed him up and why you showed him up and what he told you, and now you want to say that I'm sure we'll revisit it. Yeah, you know what? It probably will be because you shut your damn mouth off.
What you should have said is, you know what? I did something I shouldn't have done, and it's over now. And that's exactly how this should have ended. And it's not going to end now. We're gonna be. I guarantee we will talk about this during the regular season. You and I will have a conversation about this situation again during the regular season because AJ Hinch has already predicted his own future.
Yeah, and guess how it'll end?
With Angel Hernandez being the bad guy. Yeah. Does Angel Hernandez miss calls sometimes? Sure. Can he be arrogant and thick-skinned? Sure. Or thin-skinned, excuse me. Thin-skinned? Sure. Is there an issue with Angel Hernandez? Possibly. He's been investigated he's been under scrutiny before, right? His willingness to pass everything off, all of his issues off as on his being a Latino person, right? But I don't think that this is something that is an Angel Hernandez problem. This is an AJ Hinch problem.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, I'm really disgusted by that fact, and I heard a story, and I won't say where I heard it from or who told me, but a credible story, and I like this. I don't think I've told it on the show yet. So after Jim Leland and the Detroit Tigers were on the receiving end of that missed call, right, the perfect game, the Jim Joyce call. And Joyce had his contrite moment and his emotional moment, owned it all in the media, went over to the clubhouse, talked to Galarraga himself. The crew left. The crew at the stadium. The crew left at 3 people. There was one still there. That was Jim Joyce, sitting in the clubhouse, just torn apart, broken up, right? And the clubby for the umpire room goes and talks to Leland and says, "Hey," he said, Jimmy is still in there. Jimmy's still in there, and he looks pretty jacked up. Like he's not good. So Jim Leland, after having gotten, deep inside Jim Joyce's rear end, right? As the play happened, he was out there, went off again when the game was over before they left the field. Jim Leland proceeds to grab a 6-pack of beer, walk down to the umpire room, put the beer on the table. They both light up a cigarette and talk. And Leland says, "Jimmy, we won. I understand that you're upset, but my job is to get wins. We won that game. I'm sorry that it happened, but you got to let it go, man. It's okay. You got to move past it." That's what should have happened. I'm not saying that you go and you put your arm around Angel and say, "It's okay, buddy, it happens." But that story never came out until I finally heard it from someone who was more familiar, with the situation. Obviously, there's no secret. I've had a chance to get to know a pretty fair share of big league guys. So somebody around the big leagues at some point, either club or whatever, player, whoever it might be, I've been fortunate. It's a hell of a story. Just, and that was one of those things that makes that story get even better, right? We've seen how it's played out over the last, almost 10 years now. But this is not the way that Hinch should have been. Hinch, as a manager, still owes a modicum of respect to the umpires that are out there. Just because you're a new manager, you're a young guy, you've won a World Series, you haven't had the tenure that most of these umpires have had, nor will you. So get off your high horse. Because how would you like it when an umpire rakes you through the coals for being a jackwagon, and you come out and start showing just showing your butt, and they go ahead and leak one of their ejection reports? Or what if that game with Terry Collins and everything was mic'd up? What if he comes out there and someone gets an angel hand in his face and you just hear him just blasting him? And it turns out that the call that was made was the right call. And now we get to hear how you treated a guy because you don't like him, when at the end of the day, hey, guess what? You was right and you were wrong. It's going to take one of those scenarios. One scenario where a manager really all of a sudden gets found out for what he's doing the wrong way, for this whole thing to become a snowball effect. So moving on, as we get into the American League West, the Los Angeles Angels, we mentioned this at the top of the broadcast, said that, at least this has been reported, nothing official yet. Mike Trout is down to almost the last season of his career, or less of his contract. Excuse me, not of his career, of his contract. Mike Trout, I think at this point, still one of the best players in the game. There is now talk from reporters in Los Angeles that the Angels are considering offering Mike Trout a 10-year, $350 million extension. It's unclear if it's actually been proposed. It would run pretty much from Trout's age 29 to 38 season, so from 21 to 30, basically meaning that he would finish out the remaining 2 years, $66.5 million, and then the extension would kick in. The question now becomes pretty simple. Does this number hold up after Bryce Harper's deal? And secondly, does Mike Trout want to stay in Los Angeles? Bryce Harper's already been very vocal about wanting the Phillies to go ahead and make a run at Mike Trout next year or in the next 2 years and have him brought into Philadelphia.
The Phillies can't afford Mike Trout anymore. There's no way that Mike Trout in free agency gets a smaller contract than Bryce Harper. If he does, I don't know if I can watch baseball anymore. That's ridiculous. Mike Trout is head and shoulders a better player than Bryce Harper.
At some point, it depends on if Trout – it would have to be on Trout to accept the deal, though. So let's just – again, that would have to be, at that point, up to Trout to accept it, which I am curious, if he was tendered a lower offer than one of those guys, would the MLBPA fight him signing it because of the precedent that it might set, which we've seen before?
Do you know what his F-WAR is? What his wins above replacement total is since 2012?
Talking average per year or total number?
Total. His F-WAR.
60?
64.
That's a hell of a guess. Come on.
Yeah, that's good. Especially since the number 2 guy in the league is Josh Donaldson, and it's 27 wins above Josh Donaldson. When you say Mike Trout's the best player in the league, it's not hyperbole. He's the best player in baseball. He just happens to play for a team that doesn't want to put the pieces around him that they need to put around him in order to win ball games. They floundered at 500 or below for the last 4 years. They haven't been to the playoffs. They haven't sniffed the playoffs in 4 years. And it's a crime to keep the best player in baseball through his prime in that situation. No, Mike Trout should not want to be an Angel. Mike Trout should not make $350 million.
I feel like we need to ask somebody what the playoffs smell like. We always say no one sniffed the playoffs in years. Like, I just want to ask somebody, hey, what do the playoffs smell like?
They smell exactly like the inside of the glass that the Constitution of the United States is put in.
Chris has a bit of a internet connection issue we've been fighting with. Say that one more time. It kind of broke us up right at the end, and I missed the. It smells like what now?
It smells like the inside of the glass that they preserved the Constitution of the United States in. It smells like freedom. Okay, that's what it smells like hot dogs and apple pie and freedom, Graham. That's what this playoffs smell like. So
that has to be by far the best one-liner you have ever delivered in the 3 years we've been doing this show.
So, no, Mike Trout should not want to be an Angel in 2 years. Mike Trout should want to be on a team that's going to contend. And no, Mike Trout should not make $20 million total more than Bryce Harper. He should make $50 million more than Bryce Harper on a shorter contract. I don't think $40 million a year is too much to pay for him between
9 and 38.
27 and 38 or 29 and 38. I don't think it's too much. I think he's going to be worth it. I think he's one of the few people in the league that you can look at and say, yeah, I think he's going to earn that money.
Yeah.
Probably all the way up until he's 37. His last year might be a downer, but hey, he's going out hard. He's going out strong.
Yeah, I think he earned it.
So
I am curious, and I hope he really does kind of go for the Grand Tour, on his retirement year. I'm curious what all the teams are going to present him with, like what kind of because to me still the best gift ever still has to be the rocking chair for Mariano Rivera, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, a chair made from all the bats that you broke during your. I mean, that's just pretty good.
I think that what's even better was that at some point, someone was like, "He's just going to keep sawing bats off. Maybe we should start collecting them."
So that brings us into our standings, right? American League West from last year is just a reminder. The Houston Astros won the division at 103-59. The Oakland A's in the wild card at 97-65. The Mariners finished third at 89-73. The Angels finished one game below 500 at 80-82. And the Texas Rangers finished a distant at 67-95.
A distant?
Yes, a distant.
Like
That's go ahead. Yeah. So,
I like it. No, I like distant because it's a good descriptor.
It's a new a new way to measure
distance. Good. I like it. So I'm assuming that because I wasn't here last week that you went first.
Actually, yes, I did. I went first, and then I went second.
Right. But your predictions were first, and then mine were second, presented by you.
Right. I mean, I figured the right one should be up front, and then we'll go ahead with the back-ended argument at the tail end.
Oh, so you did it backwards. Got it. So we're probably going to argue. I'm just going to throw that out there right now.
Took us long enough.
All right, here's what I got.
I mean, let's be real. We've been way too chalk throughout this entire thing, except for really last week was the only non-chalk week we've had, and you weren't here.
Right. So here's where we get to maybe probably have some discussion because let's just go. The Houston Astros. I have them winning this division. This is their division to lose, in my opinion. But I have them at 98-64. They don't win 100 games this year.
Really?
Here's why.
I have them at 97-65.
Maybe we're not going to have any discussion.
I originally had them at 162, but in actually really breaking down, because honestly, I'll tell you what got me is interleague play. They face the NL Central and the Rockies in interleague play this year.
Right. But let's not forget, we've got no Lance McCullers, right? He's gone for the season. We've got Dallas Keuchel's probably gone, right? Unless they are the team that happens to pick him, but he hasn't signed with him yet. So
I think he's had plenty of opportunity at this point. I think it's going to be finally just look. It's going to be your last ditch effort and whatever. But even then, you're not going to see him for the first month, at minimum the first month.
Right. Charlie Morton may not be a linchpin to this team, but he's definitely pop that they need.
Yeah.
Gone in free agency.
He's in Tampa.
Now their starting rotation after the big two, right, falls off. I mean, we go to a reliever turned starter turned reliever in Colin McHugh, turned starter, who's going to be a starter again, who was a reliever last year after being a starter previously in his career. But let's look at Colin McHugh. The guy started He started 0 games last year, played in 58, had a decent ERA, but he only pitched 72 innings.
Right.
His last season that he pitched as a starter was
2016.
as a full-time starter in 2016. Had a 4.34 ERA and a 3.2 strikeout to walk ratio. Doesn't really build up a whole lot of confidence in this guy, right? Hasn't been a starter for a while. Now he's coming back. They're going to need him because McCullers is out. Keuchel's probably gone. You've got Wade Miley. Wade Miley's got a lot of time in the league. He did really well last year in his 16 for the Milwaukee Brewers, where he had a 2.57 ERA. That's great, except that his previous season's 5.61 is really more of who he is. Right?
Yeah.
His career average.
He's a mid four to higher kind of starter. Right.
And a sub 3 strikeout to walk guy, which is not what you want. Does not instill a lot of confidence. The guy in his last season in the American League posted a 1.729 whip. That's just not sustainable. And a sub 2 strikeout to walk ratio. Just not sustainable, especially for a division that's going to be competitive, I think. Not as competitive as maybe it was last year, although we sort of got thrown out of that by how strong the National League or the American League East was.
I think that's the wrong descriptor. I will say to me the NL Central will be competitive. This division will be kind of gridlocked. I don't think it's going to be an overly competitive division, but I think the second, third, and fourth place teams are going to be jockeying for position a lot.
They're going to be jockeying for that second and third place spot.
Right.
There are going to be 4 teams playing for third place.
But I don't think either of us really have a comfortable feel. I guess the other wild card probably has to come out of here, because I don't see the Blue Jays or the Rays being good enough to win to win both wild cards next year. And I don't see anybody in the NL or in the AL Central being good enough to win a wild card. So I guess one of them has to play for a wild card. So it's going to matter.
Right. And their third guy, or their last guy in the rotation, is a rookie. I mean, you got Josh James coming in as their number 5 guy, most likely, currently, according to their current depth chart, and he's a rookie who started 3 games last year. He did well, really well. Posted a sub 1 whip, 4+ strikeout to walk ratio.
Well, they have the option of a Brad Peacock. Granted, at most he started 24 games, but he started 21 games in 2017 and had a 3 ERA with a 13-2 record. So, I mean, he's a guy you can fall back on. Do they want to? Probably not, but it's there. To me, the other thing you look at is you've lost Brian McCann. Is it a huge loss? Probably not. I mean, Brian's getting older. He's had some knee issues. He talked about how, really his pitch framing was a big deal because he was trying to protect that right knee so much that it was affecting how he would receive the baseball and how the baseball was being presented to the umpire. Which something that he understood it was a weakness for him. But also Evan Gattis is gone. Both guys had the capacity to be big bats. And now those guys are gone. Now, everything else we keep, I like the Michael Brantley grab.
That's what I was just going to say. Michael, they pick up Michael Brantley, which alleviates some of that pop, the loss of some of that pop in the Charlie Mortons and the McCanns and the yada yada yadas.
Right.
But what we really need to see, and what I think is going to be really important to this team, especially like you're talking about with interleague play against a very competitive National League Central Division, is going to be Carlos Correa.
Yeah.
Carlos Correa cannot have the kind of season that he had last year, where he's on and off the DL, where he's not bouncing back from these injuries. He's got to be healthy. He's got to have a bounce back season. And if he does, this is going to be that sort of offense that's sort of unstoppable again, right? Like they were in a couple of years ago when they won it all. But again, I feel like this is going to be a -5 season for them. They're gonna lose 5 wins this season.
Well, and let's look at this too. Carlos Correa has only played in more than 110 games once.
Right.
In 2016, he played 153 games.
Right.
2017, he played 109 games. Last year, 110.
Which in 2017, remember we talked about that in 2017 when we were discussing his MVP.
Right.
Because how do we give MVP to a guy who only plays in 2/3 of the games?
Right.
Right.
And then last year, granted, at least in 17, he hit 317. He's an OPS of 941. He slugged 550, 24 home runs. Last year, in one more game, he had 20 fewer at bats. He had almost 37 fewer hits. He had 9 fewer home runs, 19 fewer runs batted in, and his batting average was almost 90 points lower. He was from a 315 in 2017 to a 239 last year. So, really, this is one of those. I'm not saying it's not a make or break year. Let's not over dramatize this for Carlos Correa, but we need to see him. We need to see him kind of find his way back into the fold, and because he is, a big young linchpin piece for this ball club.
Right. And I'm not saying this is a make or break year for Carlos Correa, but this is absolutely Carlos Correa's performance is absolutely make or break for the Astros this year.
Yes, agreed. I think that's the right way to put it.
Especially with Charlie Morton gone.
Yeah. All right. So we had the Astros sitting 97 or at 97, 98 wins on top.
Right. I've got in number 2, I've got the Oakland Athletics at 85 wins and 77 losses. They're not going to come anywhere close to the 97 wins that they had last year. In my opinion, that was a fluke. We're not going to see that again from them. I think they played the games that they played very well. But going back and looking at this team, I think they are an 85-win team, and I don't think that there's another 85-win team in this division.
Well, keep in mind, Sean Manaea is done for the year. James Paxton, a guy he hoped, or he left from Seattle, but a piece on the West Coast you kind of were looking for. When Mike Fiers is your number one guy, and the last big thing he was throwing no-hitter, I think 2 or 3 years ago for Houston, and then Marco Estrada is probably the biggest name coming out of Toronto, and you just don't know what the hell you're going to get, and he's 35 years old.
Right, he's the question mark.
Numbers just don't sit well right now for the Oakland Athletics.
I feel like, though, that
by the way, I have him 85 and 77 as well.
Oh, nice. I feel like their offense is massively underrated, though. You're talking about guys like Matt Chapman. He's not a big batting average guy, but he's a big bat.
Sure.
Matt Olson, another big bat. Chris Davis, who, not the Orioles Chris Davis, but the Chris Davis who kind of shocked Major League Baseball by winning the home run title, right? I think that's a huge. There's no question that he is a huge piece in that very potent offense. And then Stephen Piscotty, another huge piece in a very potent offense that I think people aren't giving as much credit as it deserves.
Sure. And also they grabbed Jurickson Profar away from the Rangers. Does it mean much? We'll see. This is a guy who has really underperformed. Had one of the better years of his career last year, though, in 146 games. 20 dingers, a 254 average from 172 the year prior with injuries. So, I mean, there's a possibility here so far at least being something decent.
And with a guy like Blake Trinan as closing games for him, right? A single baller like Blake Trinan closing games for him.
Right.
I really feel that if they can get in a position to be ahead in the ninth inning, they can win ball games.
Yeah, and with Fernando Rodney and your bullpen, I mean, it just gets better from there. So
we don't talk about that.
So in third, I have the Los Angeles Angels. I have the Angels at 77 and 85.
Oh, we're a little off there. I haven't been breaking even at 500. That's about where they've sat the last few years.
They did, but let's keep in mind they have no.
That's actually an extra win for them.
Yeah, but when you lose Ohtani, which was a big piece, the question is going to be how good is Zach Cozart coming back from the injury? Jonathan Lucroy is there, doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot.
Ohtani's not going to pitch this year, but he might play. He has talked about taking batting practice as soon as next week.
Well, he had Tommy John surgery in October, so how he's going to pull that off, I have no freaking idea. But if they think he can do it, I mean, whatever. More power to him.
DH, swing the bat, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, whatever goes for you. Zach Cozart right now has a grade 1 left calf strain, so that's possible. He could miss opening day. Justin Upton has some tendonitis in his right knee, so that's at least a negative there. But to me, there's just they've got some decent names. I just don't see them being as good as they were last year, and that rotation has not gotten any better. Trevor Cahill and Matt Harvey are not going to do anything to really win you a lot more games.
I feel like Trevor Cahill and Matt Harvey don't equal a Shohei Ohtani.
Right.
And that sucks to say, but if they do equal a Shohei Ohtani, that's how they stay pat at 500. Is they need to.
At best, what they do is they pick up Justin Bour at first base, really able to comfortably put Albert Pujols in the DH spot. And Justin Bour, guy who was hitting 322 in Miami, hit 270 last year, 34 extra base hits last year as well. So, I mean, it's one of those where you've got a little bit of power there. I just don't see enough power there to put them above 80 wins.
They picked up Jonathan Lucroy, who I feel like he had a better season I feel like he didn't have quite as good a season as Oakland as it seemed like he did, but he's a hell of a clubhouse presence. He's a hell of a clubhouse. He's a good catcher. He's not a bat. He's just not.
No.
He's not a replacement for any losses in power that they may have sustained over this offseason.
He's got 100 career home runs in 9 seasons.
Right. So I feel like just because Mike Trout is who Mike Trout is, this team's going to win more games than it looks like they should on paper. I think they hover around 500 just like they have for the last 4 or 5 years. But it's definitely only good enough for third place in this division right now.
Okay. I ran the Mariners out in the 4th place. I had the Mariners at 70 and 92.
Okay, we're about 5 off there too. I have 75 and 87.
Okay. Again, I just with Paxton leaving, that leaves a big hole in there. You lose Cano, you lose Nelson Cruz. At best, you got back Edwin Encarnacion. They have no real closer. Hunter Strickland is there, but we'll see what that is. I mean, D. Gordon at second was your biggest thing last year. Maybe Tim Beckham at short is a little nice, but when Felix is still your big.
They still got a guy on their offense who's going to put the ball in play 3 or 4 out of every 10 times, right? I mean,
D. Gordon?
No, the old man.
Oh, Encarnacion?
No, the old man, the old Japanese man.
Well, I saw some. Is he trying to come back and play again this year?
He wants to play. Yes, he's going to play in Japan. He's going to play in the Tokyo Games.
I saw that where he said he was going to play, and he said he wants to keep playing. I mean, he's going to be the Julio Franco of the league. It's just man, good lord.
If he does decide to actually play this season, I still feel like he can put the ball in play, right? And with a D Gordon, that might be a big deal. Encarnacion for who did they lose to the Mets? To
the Mets. Robbie Cano. We just said Robbie Cano,
right?
And Nelson Cruz to the Twins.
Right. But but Cano for Encarnacion is a bit of a wash in my opinion. I think Cano's the better defender in that situation, but at the plate they're a bit of a wash to me. I don't think that gives them anything, but I don't think that the things that they've done to cut costs and to, I don't know if they're going to retool, hopefully rebuilding is what's in their future. I don't think that more than negative 15 is really where they're going to be at this year.
But to me, James Paxton was a huge piece in that rotation. He's gone. He's in New York. So you really have nobody, worth anything in that rotation to get you anywhere. And I think overall they're going to be a relatively weak team. So if you want to go 5, that's fine. I'm really comfortable where I sit at 70-92. If they can break 70 wins, I'll actually be kind of impressed because I see a lot of weakness there in a lot of different areas.
Finally,
we're distant. I went just mainly for easy math, and I have no real faith. I put them at 62 and 100.
I put them at 60 and 102.
That works.
I think that Beltre's gone. This is the only if you're looking at a team that is primed to go into a rebuild, it's the Texas Rangers. I think Seattle Mariners too, but they don't want to do that up there. But if you're looking at a team that's primed to go into a rebuild, it's the Texas Rangers.
Right.
Guys like Rougned Odor, Joey Gallo, right? Mike Meyer.
They're just waiting for this guy's contract to get to expire. I mean they they upped this so much, and then all of a sudden he just nothing.
I think that Rougned Odor is going to be the guy that we look at the trade deadline as their big hot commodity, but he's not that hot of a commodity. Joey Gallo. How long before we have to say Joey Gallo is a major league bust?
Oh, are we not currently?
Oh, how long was he number 1 in the pipeline? I mean, and he's still got all this clout? I don't understand where the clout comes from.
He hasn't cracked 210 for a season yet. His highest batting average is 209. Last year he hit 206. That's 500 at-bats last year. 103 hits.
For a guy who was supposed to be the best prospect in baseball for at least 3 years in a row, he's a bust. He's an absolute bust.
Only one problem with that. In those last 2 seasons we just mentioned, he has a combined 81 home runs.
And if you're hitting 10 points above the Mendoza line, it doesn't matter how many times you put the ball out of the park. You're not helping your team.
It made Bryce Harper a ton of money. He barely made it to 250 this past year.
Yeah, well, he's a 250 guy. I mean, he's 260 guy if you take his.
I get it. And if
but
Gallo can figure this out, all of a sudden
but 210 and 260 are light years apart in baseball.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. And you look also. They got really. This ball club got grabby, looking for pitching. Right, you got rid of Cole Hamels last year to the Cubs. Now you look at Mike Minor, Lance Lynn, Drew Smyly, Edinson Volquez, names who we have heard for quite a while, which is maybe part of the problem is that they're names that we've heard of for quite a while. Lance Lynn had a decent little while in St. Louis, goes to Minnesota, got paid. They didn't like it, sent him over to the Yankees, right? Try to make something out of there. Was okay with the Yankees. Drew Smyly, guy's kind of been around for a little bit, right? We know with Detroit, was with Tampa Bay. Didn't even play in the big leagues in the last 2 years. Hasn't played in the big leagues since 2016. And he's 33 years old. So what this club thinks they're going to get is just, again, they're going to be the club that hopes for some guys that have some good years. They can shell off to somebody else come July.
What they're gonna do is they're gonna hope for Joey Gallo and Rougned Odor to both be above 260 at the trade deadline, so that they can dish them for something.
And maybe Shin-Soo Choo.
Yeah, and probably like a Leclerc.
Yeah, I mean, even Elvis Andrus, we kind of forget him there, but he's 30 years old. Last year, guy hit 256 last year. He's not a power guy. He's had over 10 home runs once. He hit 20 in 2017, which kind of makes you raise your eyebrows as an odd thing, but nothing happened. And then last year down to 256. So, I mean, yeah, it's about 20 points below his career average, but at 30 years old, he's a guy who certainly could factor into a club who wants a veteran presence with some solid infield defense. That could be good there. So to round it out, again, we sit chalk pretty much again, especially after last year. The Astros on top, the A's, the Angels, the Mariners, and the Rangers, top to bottom. And surprisingly enough, nobody we have in this division winning 100 games. And to me, if they were not facing the NL Central, I would have likely been more apt to put them at 100 games. To me, because if they were, say, again, like last year, they faced the NL.West, probably would have had them at triple digits. But I think the Central is good enough to take some wins away that they had last year, and I think the Stros sit at 97 and 65, same as you.
I agree.
Well, I know you were the first one to say it.
Yeah. I will say, that heading into, 11 days away now from actual baseball. So heading into opening day, I think that the people that I'm going to be watching the most in the American League West are going to be the starting rotation for the Oakland Athletics. I want to see what they do in real games, in games that matter.
Right.
And of course, Carlos Correa.
That and I think it's going to depend on what happens. I really want to see that this rotation and this pop of what the Angels can be. I think Ohtani is a big key there. If Ohtani plays, that might add a couple of more wins. That might push him to that 80-win number. But we'll see. It's going to be just a bat. He's not going to be able to field a position, so we'll see. That could be a really good thing, though, if it happens, because if Ohtani can play at least here and there, it gives us the possibility of being able to rest Albert Pujols when needed. And granted, he is going to be primarily just a defensive or just an offensive piece rather throughout this season. It's going to be a fun year, I think, for Albert, though. I mean, a lot of things are going to happen this year, right? He's at 633 home runs. He's 18 runs batted in, shy of hitting 2,000. He's already over 3,000 hits. Yeah, I doubt at this point that, he's 39. We're not going to see him hit 700. I don't think he's got 67 left in him over the next couple of years. I could be wrong. I'd love to be wrong, but I just don't know if it's going to happen.
So I will Brad Ausmus has said that Ohtani may be available as a designated hitter in the 2019 season.
Prove me wrong, Brad. If you can pull it off, prove me wrong. I don't see it, and I don't see the point. You better make damn sure before you go ahead and use that guy that you have a legitimate shot at doing anything in that division. If you're using him just to go ahead and use him, you deserve to get fired. If you have no chance at doing anything in the A.L.West, there's no reason to even bother trying to use him.
Well, Epler said a couple weeks ago that obviously he's not going to be back in time for opening day. But that it's not off the table.
You show me where they're at come mid-May, end of May, and then we'll talk about if it should be on the table or not. All right, man, good show again, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Again, be sure to follow us, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook. Please share out the page with your friends. Let them know also about the show. Make sure they're listening as well. Leave us a comment. And, of course, you can find us at OO Left Field on Twitter. I'm at Graham_OOLF. Chris is at Chris_OOLF. And also go to the Grueling Truth the Grueling Truth on Facebook, gruelingtruth.net on the internet, and go ahead and be sure to stop there for all the good stuff. Of course, right near about a month and a half away from the NFL draft, and plenty of stuff coming up on that. A bunch of moves being made there. So all your sports needs also you can find on the gruelingtruth.net. For all of us here, and also want to thank mybookie.ag for sponsoring the show again. today. For Chris, I'm Graham. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Catch you next week on Out of Left Field.